never thought my sister's engagement party would be the place where my life's biggest secret was dragged into the open. Yet there I was, standing beneath a chandelier the size of a small car, holding a flat flute of champagne and convincing myself I could survive one evening without any drama. My sister Brooke looked radiant in a pale blush dress, all soft curls and diamonds, while I stood in a midnight blue jumpsuit that I'd bought specifically so nobody could accuse me of trying to outshine the soon-to-be bride. I told myself I was here to be the supportive older sister, nothing more, nothing less. But family, especially mine, doesn't let you be nothing more, nothing less. The first warning sign came when my mother kept hovering around me, pretending to adjust decorations that were already perfect. "Don't draw attention, Lauren," she whispered at one point, her voice sharp enough to slice through champagne bubbles. I raised an eyebrow because I hadn't said a word to anyone yet. I had just been breathing. Apparently, even that was too much. Guests floated through the ballroom of the Riverside Country Club, laughing, clinking glasses, and congratulating Brooke and her fiancé, Marcus, who looked like someone's idea of a perfect son-in-law. Graduate degree, stable job, well-pressed charcoal suit, and the kind of warm smile that makes grandparents swoon. Everything was exactly as my parents wanted, or rather, as they planned. Then Uncle James arrived. I spotted him long before he reached us, tall, tanned, slightly graying at the temples, wearing that casual wealth confidence that comes from building a successful real estate portfolio in Southern California. He'd always been blunt, but in that charming, unfiltered way that made everyone forgive him 10 seconds later. Growing up, I admired him because he said what everyone else only dared to think. "Hey," he said loudly, drawing heads before he even reached us, arms spread like he was embracing the whole ballroom. "Look at this! Our Brooke finally bagged the man of her dreams." He kissed her cheek, slapped Marcus on the back, and shook my father's hand with too much energy for a man who claimed he was slowing down at 62. I tried to slip away toward the bar, but he caught my wrist with surprising precision. "Not so fast, Lauren. You're the one I wanted to see." My mother's face froze in a polite smile, the kind that telegraphed danger if you were close enough to decode it. "Uncle James, let her enjoy the party. She doesn't want to be interrogated." "Interrogated? I'm just catching up," he said, letting go of my wrist, but not of the attention he'd already attracted. "But I do want to catch up. Last time we talked, you were still in Connecticut, finishing that contract. How'd that go?" It went fine, because that's what I always said. Nobody needed to know the real story of how badly it went, how lonely that apartment felt, how many nights I drank boxed wine while staring at spreadsheets that refused to balance. "But you're back now," he continued, turning to the others instead of me. "Back in Chicago. Found your footing already, I hear?" My father cleared his throat. "She's doing well, taking on consulting work. Nothing's settled yet." The words rolled off his tongue with the same taste they always had, bitterness and control. But Uncle James wasn't interested in consulting. He leaned closer, lowering his voice like he was about to reveal a family scandal. I also heard something else. He paused dramatically, scanning the circle just long enough to pull the entire room into a single breath of anticipation. "Heard our Brill here bought herself a house." Time didn't stop, but it slowed, thick and heavy like honey sinking into tea. My mother stiffened violently. Her pearl necklace actually shifted. My father's wineglass hovered midair, halfway to his lips. Brooke blinked at me, confused, as if I'd betrayed her personally by making a financial decision without her permission. Marcus was the only one who seemed amused. "Seriously? That's amazing. Where?" Before I could answer, Uncle James supplied it for me. "Lincoln Park." Then, as if he weren't detonating a bomb in slow motion, he left. "You know the Craftsman near Burling. Red shutters, front porch, two-car garage." My parents tried to recover, but he didn't let them. "And not just any house," he added, raising his champagne like a toast. "We're talking about a $1.5 million house." Silence swallowed the conversation. Conversations around us didn't stop, but they seemed to dim like we'd stepped under a spotlight. My mother's voice came out thin. "James, please, it isn't—" "Wait, what?" Brooke asked, turning to me as if she'd never seen me in her life. "You bought a house in Lincoln Park? Lauren, when?" My father finally spoke, each word clipped. "It's an exaggeration. The market is inflated. The appraisal—" "It's public record," Uncle James interrupted, waving a hand. "Bought in October, closed at 1.495. Might as well be 1.5. I wanted to speak, truly. I opened my mouth, but the words dissolved before they formed. Everything I'd been avoiding, the questions, the suspicions, the assumptions, was suddenly sitting between us in crystal clear numbers. Then came the worst question. Marcus asked it, not knowing the landmine he was stepping on. "How did you afford that?" My mother inhaled sharply. My father didn't move at all. Uncle James looked delighted by the tension. And Brooke? Well, Brooke looked almost offended, like my achievement was somehow a violation of her engagement spotlight. I swallowed. "I worked. I saved. I made investments. It isn't—" "What investments?" Brooke pressed. "You never talked about investments." "Because it wasn't relevant," I snapped before I could stop myself. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Uncle James chuckled. "Don't tell me you're one of those crypto people. Or did you get into AI stocks before the boom? Or—" He paused, eyes narrowing playfully. "Unless there's something else we don't know. A partner? A settlement? Lottery?" The word settlement hit like a slap. I felt the air leave my lungs, sharp and painful. My parents went perfectly still, like statues carved into denial. I forced myself to laugh, strained and brittle. No settlement, no lottery, just life. But they didn't buy it. Not Uncle James, not Brooke, not my parents. Especially not my parents. Then came the moment that twisted everything. My mother finally found her voice, but instead of clarifying anything, she said very quietly, "Let's talk about something else." That silence was louder than any admission. Uncle James raised a brow. "Why? We're just proud of her, aren't we?" He looked at me and his voice softened. "You did good, kid. Really good." For a second, I thought I might cry, not because of the praise, but because of how foreign it felt coming from anyone in my family. Then the questions resumed, more subtle, more surgical. People nearby pretended not to listen, but I could feel their attention like static on my skin. Brooke leaned in. "Why didn't you tell us?" I stared at her, unsure how to answer without unraveling everything. "Because it wasn't about you." She recoiled as if I'd slapped her. "Wow, okay." My father finally put his glass down. "Lauren, that's enough." But it wasn't enough for them, not for me, and certainly not for the truth that had been quietly rearranging our family for years without anyone daring to acknowledge it. Uncle James wasn't done either. "Can I ask just one more thing, and I'll drop it, I promise." He smiled, but there was something probing behind it. "Did your parents help you with the down payment?" My parents went silent, absolutely silent. And that silence, that was the moment everybody in that glittering ballroom knew there was a story buried beneath marble floors and catered shrimp cocktails. A story my parents had spent years making sure no one ever heard. And it was about to claw its way to the surface.
My parents' silence didn't just settle over our little circle, it spread. It seeped into the corners of the ballroom, filling the air with this suffocating awareness that there was something unsaid, something huge. I could feel eyes on us, not directly, but through side glances and the dull hum of whispers that all gatherings eventually devolve into once alcohol and curiosity reach their midpoint. Uncle James looked from my father to my mother and back again. "I'm guessing the answer is no," he said finally, but it wasn't accusatory. It was amused, pleased even, as if he'd solved a puzzle long before anyone else knew it was one. My father straightened his jacket. "We're proud of Brooke tonight. Let's keep the focus where it belongs." It was so perfectly my father, deflecting, redirecting, controlling the temperature of every room he walked into. Not because he cared about dignity or privacy, but because he cared about image, that polished, surgical image of the Caldwell family. Functional, successful, harmonious. A picture-perfect postcard you could hang on a fridge and forget was fake until the edges curled. Brooke reached for my arm again, not with hostility this time, but with genuine bewilderment. Seriously, though? How did you pull that off? I can't even get pre-approved for a condo without Mom explaining to the mortgage guy that I'm between jobs because I'm focusing on wedding planning. I looked at her, and for a brief second, I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to spill the truth in one long exhale and watch it roll across the pristine tablecloths and flower arrangements like a tidal wave. I wanted someone, anyone, to understand. But the truth had teeth, and once you let it out, you never control where it bites. Instead, I forced myself to shrug. I qualified on my own. They approved it. That's how mortgages work. Brooke blinked like I'd spoken a foreign language. Yeah, but you work freelance. So? So that's not stable, like at all. There it was again, her assumption that my life was inherently fragile, temporary, uncertain. And maybe it had been, maybe it still was. But I'd done something with it, and nobody in that room knew what it cost me. Uncle James lifted his champagne. Well, hell, maybe we underestimated this one all these years. Maybe Lauren's the one we should have been betting on. My mother bristled. She had advantages, James. Advantages. God, she always made it sound like I'd been handed a golden staircase and simply chose to climb it. But the truth was, most of those advantages came with strings so thick they felt like ropes around my neck. Marcus, sweet, clueless Marcus, tried to diffuse the tension. Hey, I think it's impressive. Good for you, Lauren. Seriously. His sincerity made things worse, because sincerity exposes insecurity, and Brooke hated being overshadowed even for 30 seconds. Well, it would have been nice to know, she muttered. Families tell each other things. I didn't mean to laugh, it just escaped. Small, sharp, slightly bitter. Like how you and Marcus eloped 6 weeks ago and only told us after the fact because you wanted a second wedding with better photos. Her cheeks flushed. That's different. Right, because when you keep secrets, it's romantic. When I do it, it's suspicious. Marcus opened his mouth, probably to defend her, but before he could, a voice from behind me cut in. Smooth, cool, and irritatingly familiar. She probably didn't tell you because she didn't want you to tell her how to do it wrong. I turned around, and there he was, Ethan. Tall, tie loosened already, shirt sleeves rolled just enough to look like casual effort rather than messy desperation. He held a whiskey in one hand and a toothpick in the other, like he'd been charming waiters by the appetizer table all evening. Of course he was here. He and Marcus went to business school together. He was practically family adjacent. Brooke groaned under her breath. Oh, God. Ethan glanced at me and winked, and my pulse betrayed me by spiking. I hadn't seen him in months, not since New Haven, not since the night we agreed we were too damaged, too complicated, and too selfish to ruin each other any further. Good to see you, Caldwell, he said. Wish I could say the same, I shot back automatically, but the corner of my mouth betrayed me by twitching upward. My mother looked at him like he was a stray dog that somehow wandered into the country club. Didn't know you were on the guest list, she said. He sipped his whiskey. That's because Marcus invited me, and if we're being honest, I'm way more fun than half the relatives you dragged here. Marcus actually laughed at that, while my father glared because nobody, not even a charming ex-something like Ethan, was allowed to puncture his curated image of refinement. Uncle James found this all delightful. Well, this night just keeps getting better. So, Ethan, you know about the house situation? My veins froze. Don't! But it was too late. Ethan's head snapped around. House? Brooke folded her arms. Oh, she didn't tell you either. Ethan raised a brow at me. Buying property now? In Lincoln Park, no less? That's not exactly budget living.
And suddenly, all the oxygen in the room felt like it belonged to someone else. I could feel questions piling on top of each other, stacking so fast I couldn't catch any of them before they toppled over and exposed something ugly. "Can we please stop making me the entertainment portion of the evening?" I muttered. But the attention wasn't going anywhere, not when the secret had already been dangled and tasted like gossip. Then Uncle James, unable to resist twisting the knife just once more, leaned forward and said, "Just tell us this one thing, Lauren. Did you buy that house with your own money, or did someone else help you?" Someone else. Those two words clawed at my chest, because the truth was neither simple nor clean nor something I could wrap in a bow. It was jagged, brutal, messy. My parents stared at me, praying I wouldn't open the vault they spent years welding shut. I looked at Brooke, who genuinely wanted to know, not out of malice, but out of entitlement. She believed she deserved access to every part of my life simply because we shared DNA. I looked at Ethan, who watched me with that unnerving mix of curiosity and concern that reminded me why I once trusted him with parts of me nobody else had seen. And then I looked at Uncle James, who wasn't asking about mortgages or down payments or interest rates. He was asking if I would finally admit the one thing my parents had spent money and shame trying to bury. My throat tightened as I opened my mouth, and then somebody dropped a tray of wine glasses across the ballroom, shattering crystal against tile, triggering a collective gasp from half the guests and breaking the tension just enough for my mother to grab my wrist and hiss, "Not here. Not here, not now, not ever." That was the Caldwell family doctrine. But the problem with doctrines is eventually someone breaks them, and I was already halfway there.
The ballroom tried to recover, but the energy was ruined. Shattered glass does that. It reminds everyone how fragile things are when pressure finally hits. The string quartet shifted awkwardly into a new song, waiters scrambled to clean the mess, and people pretended they hadn't just been caught listening to a family unravel in real time. My mother kept staring at me like she could will the situation back into the shadows. "Lauren," she whispered, "listen to me. Whatever you think you want to say, whatever you think you need to explain, tonight isn't the night. Don't turn Brooke's engagement into your—" "My what?" I said quietly. "My truth? My story? My life?" She swallowed, but didn't answer. My father finally stepped forward, guiding my mother away with a firm hand on her back. Not to protect her. No, my father didn't do protection. He did containment, damage control, optics. Brooke lingered, unsure whether to follow them or stay with me. Her engagement ring glittered under the chandelier, a perfect symbol of her perfect life. For a moment, I wondered if she could feel it cracking too, if she sensed that every family has a fault line, and ours had just shifted. "It could have just been a normal night," she whispered, almost to herself. "Yeah," I said, "it could have." But normal was a luxury we'd never really had. Across the room, Ethan lifted his whiskey in a silent toast as our eyes met, like he was acknowledging a battle none of these people realized had started years ago, one I had stopped fighting alone. He mouthed, "You okay?" I didn't answer out loud. I didn't have to. The look I gave him said everything. "No, not really, but I've been worse." The lights dimmed for the slideshow Brooke's friends had put together. Pictures of her childhood, teenage years, her and Marcus on vacations, smiling at pumpkin patches, laughing at 4th of July parties, kissing in front of Christmas trees. A curated life, a polished narrative, a story without fractures. Nobody put together slideshows for girls like me. Nobody curated the moments where the real story lived. So I slipped away from the crowd, weaving through small talk and perfume and polite laughter until I reached the far edge of the balcony. The night air was cold enough to sting my lungs. Chicago glittered below, beautiful, indifferent, sprawling. The skyline didn't care about family politics or old secrets. It never did. Footsteps followed a minute later. I didn't turn. I already knew who it was. "You know," Ethan said,
leaning beside me, elbows on the railing. Most people drop drama after dinner, not before dessert. I let out a shaky laugh. Guess I never got the etiquette memo. He studied me for a long moment. You look like someone who just realized the game was rigged 10 years ago and finally decided to stop playing fair. Maybe I have, I said softly. The door to the balcony opened again, and for a second I thought it was my mother or Brooke coming to beg or demand or negotiate. But it was just a waiter with a tray of champagne, doing his job, oblivious to the fact he'd just walked into a story already in motion. I didn't buy that house to flex, I said finally, breaking the silence, or to make a point, or to start a fight. Then why? I stared down at the city lights. Because I needed a place that was mine. Ethan nodded, more than I said. You're gonna tell them how you paid for it? I didn't answer, because that was the real bomb. Not the house, not the price, not the neighborhood. It was the why, and the who, and what it cost me. Inside, the party cheered as Brooke and Marcus hissed for a photo. Everyone looked happy again, perfect again, the Caldwell family image restored. But images don't last, and secrets don't stay buried. Not forever. This was just the first crack. The rest was coming, and they had no